you can't really get prepared for is this concept of sleep deprivation. You lose a couple hours of sleep, okay, right? Maybe you'll be able to sleep in tomorrow. The more sleep you keep losing, there's really no way of making up a deficit.
There are many seasons when it comes to sleep. Sleep is a storm that will come your way when you go to have children.
Hey there, here to chat with you a little bit today about sleep. We're going to talk about what we did, what worked for us, some of the things that maybe you do or don't know, what you can do in terms of sleep, the do's and don'ts from a scientific perspective, or maybe what some of the studies support, maybe some things that seem obvious, but there's really not a perfect way to do this. I would say that every household's going to be a little bit different. Our household is probably a little bit different than yours or than maybe your neighbors, and you got to try some different things, figure it out. I know we made some mistakes that maybe we'd go back and do differently, but there were a lot of things that I think we did
that worked really well.
That worked really well.
Yeah, especially with our first child. And I think this is probably pretty common, but with us as a child, we're just doing kind of what everybody else does because you've never been through it before. And then with our second child, I think that we made some adjustments that, well, even with our first child, we made adjustments within that. But then our second child, I think we handled even better, just how we've evolved even from one child to two in those sleep habits. So we have a 5-year-old son and we have a 21-month-old little boy as well. So we have 2 sons. One of them is 5 and one of them is just under 2 years old. And there are many seasons when it comes to sleep. But I think one of the main reasons that we wanted to talk about sleep is because sleep is a storm that will come your way when you go to have children. And sleep impacts our health. Sleep impacts our mental well-being. Sleep impacts our mood. Sleep impacts the way our body heals. It impacts so much. And it's one of the biggest things that changes when you have children. And I remember when we were pregnant for the first time, and I would hear a lot of negative talk around how our sleep would change. And I remember being irritated by it, like the negative talk around it. And it would frustrate me because I had in my mind, we can create anything that we want. And I was very humbled after babies came. I remember one meme somebody sent me that was like, congratulations, get sleep now because you'll never sleep again. And I remember like they were trying to be funny, but I just didn't find that funny at all. And I'm like, I'm done with the negative talk around this. And then after having our children, I was very humbled and very surprised actually at the surrender that's involved and the actual lack of control that there really is. And we learned our way through it. And I do feel that we've been very intentional at the same time. You know, when something wasn't working, we adjusted, we read, we researched, we have approached sleep, I'd say very much the way that we approach everything else in our life, which is let's optimize the best that we can with what we've got. And if this isn't working, how can we make it even better? And how can we do this as a team? And we definitely made some mistakes initially.
I remember when we first had Courage and we were in the hospital, you know, if you're a new parent out there, this is something I think we took advantage of with Courage, but we had the baby and there are, you know, nurses in the hospital that will hold your baby so you can sleep, so you can get longer than the small chunks of time.
They'll keep your child for about 4 hours, I think, in the hospital.
And they have to feed periodically, right? Very often when they're brand new babies.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, we had this baby, we're in the hospital, and I had no idea anything. And we had read books.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We had done parenting classes through the hospital. Like I think we came in as prepared as we could.
As prepared as we knew how to be.
Right? You know, so I think that I remember in the hospital them saying, hey, we'll hold your baby so you can sleep longer. And we had what I would say was like a challenging 36-hour delivery. Especially you, challenging 36-hour delivery where you had the baby in the middle of the night. What, didn't you? No, was he born at like 9 or 10 o'clock?
Well, we went in the night before and labored throughout the night. I had it in my mind.
Yeah,
No
we went in at like
epidural,
7 o'clock.
no drugs.
Labored through the whole night.
And I was already in labor the whole day before we went in.
So we were up the whole night, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember falling asleep at like 10 a.m. for like finally a stretch and then getting jolted.
Yeah.
And like there was some...
It was overnight labor, in and out of the bathtub, me, just in incredible, never experienced before pain. Labor pains are something very...
Unmedicated, right?
Unmedicated, yeah. And I know every woman has her own experience in that. And for me, without going too far into like the actual birth story, because that's not here what we're talking, not what we're here to talk about, but our son was in the wrong position. He was what they call sunny side up. So I was in back labor for that amount of time. And so, yeah, we did not sleep at all that night. And then he ended up coming at...
Night.
Yeah, we had.
So the next night.
Yeah, we ended up in a cesarean after him me not being able to progress a whole other day. So we went in at 7 p.m. and then at 9:46 p.m.
That's right.
is when he was born. And, then by the time, especially because it was a cesarean, by the time that all the paperwork is done and the baby is fed for the first time. And like, I think our family that had been there at the hospital waiting for this birth, I think they left at like 2:00 in the morning. And then it was you and me and the nurses and this new little human. Like, oh my gosh, he's here. And that was, we were already both so exhausted after that experience. And then, so when the nurse would offer to hold him for a few hours, we absolutely took them up on that.
Yeah, I recall that. And then, so then the next stage is leaving the hospital. And we were there for, I think, 5 days.
Because it was a cesarean, we were there
for a while.
For a long time. Yeah, I think it was 5 days.
And then we came home, and I'd say most everybody, you think about putting the nursery together, right? You're looking at having a crib, painting the walls, you got the decorations, everybody has a nursery, but it's not even really where the baby sleeps when you first get home. We had a bassinet beside our bed that you had picked out, and then we start this next phase. And I'd say, day of the baby being here, now we're home, we're adjusting to this new sleep schedule, which I don't know how often the babies have to eat. Like, I think we're told that they need to eat every 3 or 4 hours.
There's something called cluster feeding. There is almost, it depends on the baby, of course, but there is almost this peaceful period when you come home that you're settling in, and maybe they're not like crying all day long or anything like that. Like, there's almost this
too.
They sleep for long periods, and it's an interesting, almost like calm before the storm, at least in our experience. And before we ever brought the baby home, we had obviously had conversations, because we are planning type people. And we had planned like, hey, you are going to maintain, because we were in business together at that time. We were business partners, and we were navigating a team and customers and all these different things that even through pregnancy, you took more of the wheel on, because I, was sick and different things like that. But then we determined, okay, when we bring this baby home, I'm going to care for our baby, and you are going to work. And we're obviously both going to care for our baby, but I'm going to be
in the night hours.
Yeah. And during the day, right? Like that's how we thought of it. And we worked for ourselves. And so you weren't like leaving for the office like a lot of families are, but you were work from home. And one thing about entrepreneurship, and when you're working for yourself, you could literally work 24/7 around the clock, which is what we were really used to doing before we had children.
Because we thought we were busy before we had kids.
Because we thought we were busy, right? And we would just work all day, every day, unless we were playing, but ultimately, like, you work late and you start early, and just like all day, every day, when you're in entrepreneurship, like you really could, there's always something more to be done. There's always something more to be done. And so what we entered into in our life with this new baby was I don't want to do our business. I want to just be with our baby. And I'm so excited. And I heard people talk about postpartum and different things. I'm like, how could you possibly have any sadness after you come home with this little bundle of joy? I was so excited to be pregnant. I was so excited to have a baby. I did not expect any form of emotional downswing, anything. I was just thrilled. I'm like, I'll be with our baby 24/7. You go do the business. I don't want to even think about that. And by the way, you need your sleep because you're going to be doing our business. You need our sleep. You need your sleep through the night. You need to be sharp for the conversations and for, all the things that you need to do.
To make the money, because making money is important. We got a new baby. I mean, we have all the reasons, right? Like, oh, by the way, you're the one that's going to be breastfeeding. I'm not doing that. So if one of us has to be up, it should be you, right? Like, it just makes sense.
What can I do? And so we have these agreements of just basically like, I was going to be up with the baby through the night because Thiago needed his sleep. And these were not Thiago pushing his beliefs on me or me. Like, it literally is what we thought that we wanted and what we thought made sense and what we thought would work. And boy, were we wrong. We were wrong. And I know that, maybe the way that we ended up doing it, and especially the way that we ended up doing sleep with our next child, isn't the way that a lot of families do it. I think a lot of families do it the way that we started doing it, and they keep doing it because I'd say for a couple of reasons. There's just maybe a lack of perspective, a lack of awareness, and again, every family has to make these decisions for themselves. We're not saying that our way is the only way or the right way, but it is absolutely, I think, what worked best for us in a sense of us being able to be there for each other and in partnership through this process. It was a learning experience. So what we quickly discovered was that my mental well-being was declining rapidly.
Well, I think one thing that you can't really get prepared for is this concept of sleep deprivation and how it's really like a freight train that just picks up steam. So you lose a couple hours of sleep tonight. Okay, whatever, right? Maybe you'll be able to sleep in tomorrow and make up for it. Or let's say you can't sleep in tomorrow. You lose a couple hours of sleep tonight. Then the next night you lose more sleep, so on and so forth. The more sleep you keep losing, there's really no way of making up a deficit when it comes to sleep deprivation. And especially when you've got a brand new baby that's completely reliant upon you, or in this case, you don't have a partner that's really involved in the nighttime routine whatsoever, right? Because you're breastfeeding, there's so many demands on your body. I mean, you're healing physically, especially in, the first, 6 weeks, I would say specifically from a cesarean. There's a longer healing period there. And yeah, the hormones are all over the place. Just that's how it works with having a baby from the women's perspective. And I think that we had this agreement, like you mentioned, hey, I'll do the business, you do the baby. And during the day, because I was able to work from home, I would help, but I wasn't nearly as hands-on as you were. And I think one of the biggest realizations that we had was that when I do the business, even if I do a long day, maybe a 16-hour day doing the business, when you're doing the baby, that's a 24-hour day.
Yeah, and we're both working. That's something that I think we really realized is, first of all, we started to take back the hours, right? Because you could work 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. at night, 10 p.m. at night. Like, that's, again, like entrepreneurship. You start off with your morning routine. We were such morning routine people, and you got to have your physical fitness. You got to have all these things that we were just used to having all of the freedom in the world to do. And then on top of that, having the time to do our business and whatever needed to be done. And so that we started off just like you working like we had always worked. And so it was 12, 13, 14-hour days, and then at night you resting and me up with the baby. And it started to click this isn't working. And so we started to just cut back. Okay, what's not working about this? This is really, I need more help with the baby. Can you stop working by 7 o'clock at night? So 7 to 7, that's still like a 12-hour day or whatever. And so we started to kind of like try to cut back on like your working hours, but then I was still getting up with the baby. And then we realized, hey, this just isn't, even though I'm breastfeeding and I have to be up anyway, there are things that you can do and things that you can help with. And so this is just really an evolution of this is how a lot of people do it. This is how we've heard that it's done, and this isn't working for us. And so eventually we got to the point where we realized, hey, when you're working on the business, I'm also working, and my work is probably harder than your work. And let's just be real. Like when you're with a baby, you're dealing with emotional strain. Like when that baby cries, something like just happens. It's almost like a nail on a chalkboard, right? It's like this like experience of I gotta do something. I gotta fix it. I gotta shut it off. Like, and especially like when you're a first time mother. I know for me, I had so much anxiety around like there's a human who's fragile and who's relying on me for their life. And so if I heard a cry, it did something to me physiologically because I was in such this, strange place because I was in such a deficit and my body was going through this crazy experience of healing and a million things were going on in this postpartum world. But ultimately, when it came to sleep, I was absolutely not getting enough of it. And so we determined, okay.
Well, what do people tell you? Hold on. People tell you, okay, if you're not sleeping at night, just nap during the day.
Don't just nap when the baby's napping.
And what's the reality around that?
So the reality is that...
Or your reality, I should see. How did that work for you?
Yeah. So we have something called a circadian rhythm. And when it's bright and sunny outside, sometimes it's harder to sleep. Your mind, at least mine, when I was a new mom, was racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. And so to try to lay down and rest, it's almost like, have you ever been so tired that you can't sleep? Like you reach that point of
it's overtired with our kids.
It's overtired. Yeah, like it happens to babies. Exactly. Like it's almost like this anxious feeling that you're like, go to sleep. Like I have to sleep. And you almost put this pressure on yourself to sleep. But like I would lay down and I wouldn't be able to, even though I was so exhausted. And then you finally like fall asleep and you get into sleep. And then 5 minutes later, the baby's awake because you spent all that time trying to force yourself to go to sleep, but you couldn't. Or
the activities around the house where you feel guilty even when you do get some sleep because then maybe something else isn't getting done.
Everything else isn't getting done. I mean, there's like this lack of energy of like you're giving everything. Like for me, I was giving everything to this little human, every bit of energy that I had. And not that there wasn't joy wrapped into all of that. It was a very joyful, blissful experience at the same time. It's like you have all the feelings at once. And then you look in the sink and you have, first time moms, I have to boil these bottles so that my child doesn't get a germ. Yeah. Did not boil any bottles with my second baby, by the way, but
it's a whole nother conversation. First time, second time,
yeah.
Do's, don'ts.
But you see this like stack of things that you need to do or prepare, or like laundry starts building up because this baby like spits up on everything, and so they go through 7 outfits in a day. Or your outfit, you look down, and I was like, I gotta start wearing matching pajamas at some point. Like I am frumping out. Like that's how it felt. Like I just. I need to take a shower. Like if the baby's sleeping, maybe I could like shave my legs today. Maybe I could take a quick shower. Like that's one thing like nobody ever told me, like, good luck taking a shower when you have a newborn. You're choosing shower or sleep, dishes or sleep. It's like you really don't have time to do all of it. And when you look at the quote unquote amount of time that the baby sleeps through the day, it's like when they feel like it, right? So it's not like you can plan around like this is when the baby's going to be sleeping and this is when I'm going to do this. It's kind of like, oh, the baby fell asleep. Oh, the baby fell asleep. And a lot of times I would be holding him when he fell asleep. So then you don't even want to move because you're like, I'm not going to wake this baby up. I'm just going to lay here in this like awkward position.
And we love it too.
It's beautiful. Full,
Love
yeah.
the cuddle.
Love the cuddles. Like sometimes, yeah, you don't want to put them down. Like you don't want to, even though you need your sleep. You keep telling yourself that. Like you just like soak it up and just stare at them and like, can't even believe that you're holding this little baby. So
There's overtired.
there's all of that.
Not being able to get enough sleep. There's the guilt of things not getting done and choosing, like, what do I do? And then I remember this was almost like hit me in the face, like slap me in the face, when we had the agreement that I would get to work during the day and I would get to sleep at night and you would take care of the baby 24/7, which when you say it like that, it sounds crazy.
It sounds very selfish, but I think like
just, and we're not here to judge anybody. Like this was just our experience. And then there was the realization that was like this insidious resentment that I don't say you are wrong for at all, but it was dangerous for our relationship and it chipped away, which was, then there was this like, I don't want to call it envy or jealousy. You explain it, but it was like a getting upset with me because I had the freedom to, in my work schedule, still go to the gym, or I had time to run errands still in my day because in my work time, right, I had the flexibility and freedom and still do some of those things. And I think we realized later on, it's like, wait a minute, there's also this aspect of like, you haven't showered in like a week. You haven't changed out of your pajamas because you're just on call 24/7 with the baby. Yeah, and I'm over here going to the gym every day. I'm over here,
and like
having time away from a crying baby, right? I'm in a quiet room, noise protected, so I can do the calls and the Zooms and all the things, right? And that we had a colic child, our first child as well. So there was just the inconsolable periods of time where it didn't matter what she did. And I remember I had him sometimes where you put him down and you just got to walk away from the situation, right? And I think that we realized that there was this resentment, or, maybe you explain it from your perspective, because then it came like as a shock to me, which was like, wait a minute, you got all this flexibility and free time. And I'm like, hold on a minute, I'm working. But in fact, I realized after we had that conversation, it's like, whoa, I'm getting to do adult only time. And you never had that. And really, how hard is that?
Yeah, it is like this, as women, I think we have this desire to be understood. And I think there was such a lack of understanding going on. And it's really challenging when you're in it to really know what to ask for. You were only doing what we agreed upon together. Yet there was this resentment building as I would see you leaving for the gym, or I would see you taking a shower, or I would see you doing these things. Again, it was just like a lack of awareness, and also my inability to really share how I was feeling. It was just almost this like chipping away, this like resentment that was building for me, that then when we were interacting with each other, I was getting like snippy with you. And sometimes I didn't even really understand why. And like we discovered through communicating over time of like, wow, this is what was going on. But like when you're in it and you're getting like irritable and it just doesn't feel like you even have time to sit and think about it because you're thinking about the baby so much, or a million different things of, what we need to be concerned with. When it comes to that, it kind of like sneaks in. I remember even one time I had brought up like, oh my gosh, I haven't been back to the gym yet, or it's been 6 weeks. And you're like, well, you can go to the gym. Like I'll watch him so you can go to the gym. And then I felt like this inability to move. I became like agoraphobic almost in our home in those first 5-6 months of where I was like, well, I don't want to go to the gym. I might bring back germs, or I don't want to take him to the gym daycare, or I don't feel like that's safe. I don't want anybody to watch our child until he can speak to me. Like had all of these personal things going on with me. And in my own mind, I kept saying to myself, I don't have enough time. I don't have time to do anything. I don't have time to take a shower. I don't have time to read a book. I don't have time to watch a show. I don't have time for anything, right? But then when I would be offered time or you would offer to give me time, because you were never in a selfish state of how you feel doesn't matter. It's like I wasn't really expressing to you how I felt. And when I did express something to you, you were always willing to adjust or be. You weren't ignoring me. I just didn't know exactly what I was upset about. And then when you would say something like, well, I'll watch and see you can go to the gym. And I'm like, yeah, but I have to take a shower. I can't go to the gym like this. Like, it's like all the stuff that internally was going on is like your shower takes 10 minutes. My shower to shave my legs and actually like get comfortable takes, sometimes an hour, or like 30 minutes.
None of your clothes fit.
None of my clothes were fitting properly. I didn't feel comfortable to go to the gym. So it's like there's like this other dynamic of what was going on with me that I was also projecting onto you, because you're like, I'll give you time to go to the gym. It was like, it's not just about the gym. Like, even if you give me time, I don't know what to do with it. Like, it was a very strange space for me. We came on here to talk about sleep. And I think that one of the things that really started to help this situation was when we started sharing night. We started, initially, we would do, like, even though I was breastfeeding, and then eventually 6 weeks after I started bottle feeding, I had some production issues and also like injuries and different things. Like, we won't go into that right now. But when we started doing bottle feeding, you were able to share in the waking in the nighttime with the baby. And that would give me a break. And we started off like, no agreements. Well, there weren't like agreements. It's just like, if he's crying, like one of us will get up.
And whoever hears him will get up. And learn that
my tolerance for him crying was less than your tolerance. And so what that would lead to is, fine, I'll get up, Chiago, since you're fine with him crying. You're like, what? I was going to give it 5 more minutes. I was going to get up. And I'm like, I'm not okay with 5 more minutes. So we have style differences.
Sure.
But I was getting resentful and stressed out over that because I felt like you were letting him cry too long. And so what we realized is, okay, what is our guideline of how long we're both comfortable with him crying? And before we, we're up, right? And for me, it was always like immediate. You hear it, you're up. And I think that we both kind of came to that agreement until they get a little bit older, then maybe it's 5 minutes, but it's very rare that we would let our children cry.
Yeah, 6 weeks was a big milestone.
Yeah.
You stopped breastfeeding, and I was able to obviously participate in the night and really help, and you got longer stretches and periods of sleep.
Yeah.
And I would say 6 months was another milestone. Like, I feel like it still didn't get so much better until there was your trip to Bali, right?
One thing,
I don't mean to fast forward.
Before we fast forward to there, what did start working is our agreement before bed. We are going to wake up every other wake up, right? Because say he wakes up every 2 hours. If we're every other wake up, that gives you a 4-hour chunk of sleep. And it would give me a 4-hour chunk of sleep. So we really started sharing in that. And then what we determined was, okay, maybe it's even better if we do a recharge night. And so every other night or every third night or something like that, we would each give the other one full day, one full night where the other one would sleep in the guest room and would just take on that full night, And so we started doing that. Yeah, it wasn't every other day. It was once a week. But then with our second baby, what we determined once we were bottle feeding and I wasn't a necessity in the waking process, it was every other night you're up with the baby, every other night I'm up with the baby. And then every other night you're getting a full night of sleep. And so that's actually what ended up working. But I fast forwarded with that. But in that first experience, that was one of the things that regardless of who was working on the business, we were both working. I was working with the baby. You were working at work. Both of us had our own stressors. Both of us had our own process and what we had to handle for that day. And then when you stopped working, we were a team. The baby was not just my responsibility. The baby was both of our responsibility. And then overnight, the baby was both of our responsibility because we both needed sleep. We both needed sleep. When we think about that, like, what work is more important? Yes, the work that the husband is doing is important because it's supporting the family. The work that the wife is doing with the children is insanely important. Like, both are equally important. And I would argue even the work with the baby is more important in a sense of this child for these first 8 years, they're forming their entire identity. They're forming their personality. They're forming their healthful attachment. They're forming their self-esteem. They're forming so much that a mother or a father, whoever is there with that child, if they're their best self, if they're in a beautiful mood and they're not so tired that they're just like surviving, but they're actually able to like interact and be hands-on and love and be loving with this child and be joyful, not just in this like tired, exhausted, no creative energy space. It's so much better for the children, right? And so why do the men deserve more sleep than the women?
Well, I can't argue that they do.
They don't.
I can't argue that men deserve more sleep than women. I think what happened with us, and I can really just speak for us, is that logically it made sense initially for you to be with the baby through the night, and then game-changing milestones were that 6-week mark when then you stopped breastfeeding and we switched to formula. And for parents out there, if you're looking for a great formula, if you're scared, because there is a lot of pressure to breastfeed, right? Especially on women. But if you're looking for a great formula, reach out to us. We can even drop, a link in the comments or something, because we found a great one, couple different ones, one that we used for our first and one that we used for our second, and they've just thrived. They've thrived on them. So there are great formulas, and we're people that definitely believe food is the best source of all the nutrition that we can get, and a mother's breast milk is supreme. And there's also you being the best version of yourself, and you allowing yourself to get more sleep because you weren't breastfeeding, and you not being, a slave to having the child need you 24/7, like just changed you.
Well, that was one of the benefits. That wasn't why I initially chose to stop breastfeeding. The reason I chose to stop is because it was insanely painful. Like I never got past that point of bleeding, horrible, shocking pain. And I also wasn't producing enough toward that 6-week mark. And so again, that's like another conversation, but one, like the benefits of after I stopped breastfeeding, I was actually relieved for the reasons that you're saying, because I'm like, oh, wow, I don't have to be concerned if I eat something spicy, or, I would always put my child first.
For sure.
And I do believe breastfeeding is wonderful. And there are some women that have very beautiful experiences with it. I don't know if because of, my implants and different things in my past, impacted, some of my ability to really do that the way that God designed or whatever, but we did go another route, and I was grateful for it after for multiple reasons. And one of those reasons was, definitely feeling like I got my body back to myself.
Well, it transformed the way that we were able to work together as a team through the night. And I think maybe people are wondering, because I'd say with our firstborn, and it's just kind of a funny pattern, probably every household, like the things you do with your firstborn, the things you do with your second and your third. And I'd say we bought so many different things to help our kids sleep. And maybe we could just talk about some of the things that really helped, and maybe some of the things that maybe we wouldn't go back and buy again when it comes to sleep. And one of the things I remember at one point was a vibrating mattress that we put inside the bed. The Tranquilo, right? And we thought that really helped for a while.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Uh-huh.
One of the other things that I think really helped was having a baby Brezza, because in the middle of the night, when you got to go make a bottle, this thing made hot, warm formula, mixed it right into the bottle to where we didn't have to put the bottle in a bottle warmer and, mix it in the dark when you're half asleep and all that. The baby Brezza was really big for us in terms of being able to make the bottles throughout the night and feed the baby. Is there anything else that really comes to mind?
I remember Sarah and Tony's lucky. They sent us this gift box. And I opened it. I was like, what's this? It's a sound machine. It had like that little blue light on it. And I was like, I don't even think to get one of these things, you know? And they sent us, you know, some different things in that box that I hadn't thought to get. But definitely that sound machine really saved us. And we used that so much. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend a sound machine for sleep. And we tried different things. And that's the thing. There are so many options out there to try. Something that works right now might not work 3 weeks from now. Something that doesn't work right now, try again in 3 weeks. Don't just throw it away because it might work then. I mean, we got that like shusher toy. Remember, it goes.
Was that before or after I did all the shushing?
We got it after you were the
I would rock the baby. And
you were such a good shusher. Yeah.
Like hours.
Yeah. Once we were a team there at night, you were like the master shusher. And so I was like, oh my gosh, let's get this boy that does the shushing. And yeah, that one didn't work.
Yeah,
I wanted daddy shushing instead.
We had different sleep blankets that really helped. Like the first one was the
Merlin
sleep suit, and then we switched to Wolino.
Yeah, once you're done with
once they roll around the
bottle, then you got to go. Yeah, the Merlin sleep suit was good, and also the Wolino we actually used. We never used the Merlin sleep suit with our second baby, but
well, I laughed because literally you went out of town. You went on this 2-week-long trip.
It was like
when he was 6 months old. When Courage was 6 months old, to Bali, and literally
that's when the sleep suit.
The night that you left, so this Merlin sleep suit, it's like makes him look like the Michelin Man, like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and they can only use it as long as they're sleeping on their back. The night you left on that trip, he rolled over in that thing, and then it becomes like dangerous. So now the thing that has helped him sleep miraculously his whole 6 months of existence, pretty much, like once we started using it, I can't remember, maybe it was like,
3 months old.
3 months old. So from 3 months to 6 months, dramatic sleep improvements using the Merlin sleep suit. Then you go out of town and he phases out of it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scratching my head. I'm like literally having an anxiety attack as to how he's gonna sleep. But it worked out, and then we switched to the Wolino. And what else? Oh, so some of the things like, you're going to read online probably like a sleep routine is really important. And I know for us, we wanted our kids to kind of live on our routine in a way.
Oh, that was such a huge mistake.
We had our kids, or Courage at least, we had him adjust our schedule so that we put him down when we were going to bed, I think, if I remember correctly. And the things with that, like we weren't at bath every night, family, not every single night, if I remember correctly. And I know we didn't use the pacifier during the day. We just used it at night. Maybe you can talk about the sleep routine or what worked for us, what didn't work for us, maybe what we would go back and change.
Well, with our first child, we were just kind of firing at the hip, and he actually wouldn't accept a pacifier when he was really little, when he was colic. Like we tried everything, and he actually didn't like the pacifier. But then he ended up liking it at night. And so I was like, what if he only has it at night, and then it's like an anchor for him to go to sleep? And so he did end up only keeping a pacifier at night, which I used that same strategy intentionally with our second baby because I thought it worked so well. It's much better for their talking if they don't have something in their mouth all day long. It's much better for their teeth. Even our 5-year-old, he has like really straight teeth right now because he didn't like suck on a pacifier all the time when he was little. And of course, those things can be corrected, but I think it was really good for his mouth and really good for his speaking, and really good to have that anchor before bed. And so the nighttime routine, I was like, okay, that started to work. And it's like, what else can work for a nighttime routine? And so I made sure that the room, because I had heard people say, oh, just the baby will sleep anywhere. It's actually better if they sleep anywhere because then they don't get used to sleeping in only one way. And so I kind of like at first his naps were just kind of wherever we were, like in the middle of the broad daylight and all these things and doing what I had heard was best. And then I started to really think about it. I'm like, I don't sleep well in a bright, sunny room where there's noise all around me. And then I started to read about what their brains are going through and how important sleep is and how important the quality of sleep is. And so I was like, I'm going to like change some things. And so we started every night, I would get a little bit of lavender oil and I would rub it a little bit on the blanket next to him. So there was like a scent that he would always have at night that reminded him, hey, it's to go to bed, right? And then, yes, his sleep suit initially, and then we like transferred him over to the wearable sleep blanket. And that was every night. And then it was make sure the room is super dark, like no light in the room. It's as dark as it possibly can be. That's how I sleep best. That's like what's best for our circadian rhythm and for the different things we were learning about our sleep. So I just started applying some of those things. And here's the other thing. He never slept. Our first child never slept in the crib that we built for him, never slept in the nursery that we created for him. We ended up transferring him from his initial side beside the bed bassinet into a pack and play. And why we did that is because I was like, hey, for this like sleep routine thing, if we go on a trip, if we're in a hotel room, if we go anywhere, we can bring his exact bed, his exact little mattress thing, his exact one stuffy. Like after he reached a year old, I gave him a stuffy.
His little sound machine.
The exact same sound machine, the exact same pacifier, and it'll feel like he's sleeping in his routine no matter where we go. Like we can't take that crib with us anywhere. Why would we ever put him in it?
Which is so brilliant because like even now, like I like to travel with my pillows.
Yeah.
When I remember, and I wish I could just bring my bed with me because I would be a different human on vacations or work trips or whatever. So I think that's
it worked really well. Like we stayed in a cabin, we traveled and we stayed in a cabin with the family, or we like would take him places or in hotel rooms, and he always slept so well in that. And then on road trips, he had his blanket that he ended up falling in love with as well, and he had his little stuffed animal, Ella Friend, and his Passy, and it's like that was his sleep routine, and it worked really, really well. And that changed the game. He started sleeping through the night. He started doing all of those things. And I'd say one of the biggest mistakes that we made with our first that we did not make with our second is, in my mind, I thought, have him go to sleep later because we were later night people, and then he'll sleep in later. But what was actually happening is we would put him down around 9 o'clock at night, and he would wake up at 5 o'clock. So he was only sleeping an 8-hour night, which babies need way more sleep than that. And I think that really contributed to some of the problems. So we would nap a lot during the day.
Right. He made up and napping, like he did a lot more napping, but if we could go back and do that differently, we'd put him down earlier.
Absolutely. And with our second baby, we did. It didn't make logical sense to me, but oh my gosh, we would put our second baby down 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m. when he was a newborn.
And
he'd sleep.
It's almost like they have the same wake up trigger.
He slept till 7
regardless of what time you put him down at night.
Yeah, he slept so well going down earlier. And yeah, granted that was a little less freedom on our part. We couldn't take our summer walks at like 7:30 p.m. or whatever because the baby was already down or things like that. So it was a little bit of a sacrifice on our part, but I think overall he was in a much better position because we put him down earlier. So I would definitely recommend, it's like you say, do your research, but there's so much research out there and you can literally find anything that you're looking for. People will tell you a million different things. So that's why I really wanted to come on here, even though we're a little all over the place. But I wanted to come on here and just kind of share what our experience was, because I do think we experienced a lot of different things in this. And sometimes hearing like an actual parent experience is different than like reading research shows, because there's research for whatever side of the field that you're on.
Studies for.
Yeah. And
did you ever train a thought? You look like you were.
Well, I was just going to say the quality of the baby's sleep is just like so incredibly important.
And the conditions.
Of how they sleep.
Their environment.
Yeah. And you can find like how cool the room is supposed to be. Like they can't regulate their body temperature. So there's just like a lot to think about, but just like create a little dark cave for your baby that is like nice and cool have a breathable, wearable blanket that isn't going to end up over their head, and have that nighttime routine that at least involves, something that you can take with you if you're traveling somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess, maybe we can talk a little bit now that we talk about their environment. Like, what did you do? Because I thought you were really disciplined around, specifically, maybe you can tell, mamas or dads too out there, like, what did you do in our room so that you could help the baby throughout the night? Like, I know you're like a fanatic about these little tea lights and...
Yeah, that was a big thing. Like initially when the baby would wake up, we would turn the lights on and help him, right? Change his diaper, do all those things. And then that also started to feel like, hey, why would we do that? That actually makes no sense. Like when you turn the light on, everybody wakes up, and it was taking him forever to go back to sleep. Sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half to go back to sleep when he would wake up. And he would just wail and cry the whole time. And so I was like, we need to leave it dark in here, even through the wakings. And maybe this is common sense to some people. It wasn't to us. Like we just kind of were like, well, the baby's up. We got to do a bunch of stuff. We got to like see the bottle to like make the formula, or like even like pour like the breast milk from the pump into, or, all of these different things that we thought we needed visual for, like even to change a baby's diaper. Like I could change it with my eyes closed now. But when you're a brand new parent, there are just some things that you're like a little messy around, right? And so what I ended up doing is I bought a bunch of those little flameless tea light candles. And I would set them like right next to the bottle warmer. I would set them right next to the breastfeeding chair. I would have one sitting right next to the changing station. And then when the baby wakes up, it's just this soft candlelight. It's not this like bright, jolting, crazy light that you're like flashing on. And that really helped. And it was also like just light enough to help us see our way through like going to pick him up and out of his bassinet and those types of things. It was like enough light for us to see what we needed to see, and enough darkness for him to not be jolted and to be awake for so long. So definitely get some of those like flameless candles. And sometimes you turn one on, it can last an entire week. Just one, and I think like 10 or 12 come in a box.
I still use them.
I always give those as gifts to new moms, because there's nothing I ever thought of until I was in it. And I'm like, this like really works.
Since we're kind of on the topic, like, are there any other hacks? I know one thing is we use like a nuke pacifier now, and we co-sleep. Maybe we should talk a little bit about co-sleeping, but like the nuke pacifier that our second boy uses, because they glow in the dark. And they're easy to find when we're laying in bed with him, and he starts asking for pacifier, and it's either going to turn into like maybe like full-blown wake up crying fit, or go right back to sleep because it's so easy to find because it glows in the dark. Is there anything else maybe that you're like, this is a must-have that helped us really?
I'm just kind of looking over. I had written some notes over there, but
I know the new pacifier help.
I like the glow in the dark, and I like having multiple pacifiers right there available. What I'll say that I think that we should really venture into right now is co-sleeping. Like, let's talk about that. And we can talk about it in a couple of different ways, because we've done it now with one child, and we've now transitioned from one child to two. And I think it's worked really well. And there's like a lot of controversy, I'd say, around co-sleeping. And I don't think that we co-slept in like a traditional way. So if you're pregnant for the first time and you're about to bring this baby home, there are safety concerns when it comes to this baby just jumping into bed with you. We never did that, right? I'd say like we kind of did it in the middle. Right? The baby was always in the room with us, always right next to, where I could like reach out and touch and feel, is he breathing? Is everything good? I'd hear if he was choking, like those types of things. So he always slept directly next to our bed. And when
you're saying initially, right out of the hospital,
the
first
newborn baby state,
couple months of his life,
up until he just like couldn't fit in the bassinet anymore. And then we transferred him into the pack and play, which was also
Well, I think
in our
that
same
with
room.
our first, we had this thing that we laid in the bed, or was that later on?
That was
You
only
laid it
if he was
between
really
us.
sick. We would put him between us in like another little like co-sleeping bassinet, but for the most part, he was in his bassinet. So,
In his pack and play after the bassinet.
and then in his pack and play after the bassinet, which was also just like, right in our closet, actually, of our primary bedroom, because that was the darkest little spot that we could create that had no light, even for his naps. We made sure it was super dark. And so we cleared out our closet of any clothing, of anything, and turned it into like a little crib room. And we never used his nursery upstairs. So here's how we did it. We went from newborn bassinet, outgrows the bassinet, goes into the crib. Not to the crib, to the pack and play. Once he was able to climb out of the pack and play, that is when we built his toddler bed that he never slept in. He
A
went,
little race car.
yeah, right. So it didn't have,
Plane.
it was an airplane. So it didn't have like a gate around it, right? Like if you look at like a pack and play or a crib, it like keeps them in, right? But once he could start climbing out of that, we're like, okay, that's not safe anymore. So we built him his toddler bed. But once he could get out of his toddler bed, he would climb into bed with us. And so we just continued that. And so since our 5-year-old was, I'd say like 18 months old, 19 months old, he has slept between us in bed.
Still does.
Still does at 5 years old. And how we transitioned that with our new baby, when we brought our new baby home.
And go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt, but like why too? Because I think you have a fabulous way of like considering our oldest son's feelings and how when the second baby came into the mix, like how would this impact him if all of a sudden like we didn't want to kick him out of the bed, and so anyway, maybe talk about some of the why behind that too, in terms of like, because you've kind of taken the lead in this regard and I've really enjoyed it. Like I just love co-sleeping with our kids, but maybe you can talk about some of your thought process behind that too.
When it comes to sleep regressions, when it comes to the challenges around sleep, when it comes to when they're sick and they're congested, during those phases when they're really little and they're still in the pack and play, we had a very comfortable recliner that we could sleep in if we needed to. And so even though they were sleeping on their own, there were times that we co-slept during regressions. Like if they're crying all night long, I have never believed in cry it out. I feel that if our children are crying for us to hold them, I cannot imagine it doing any harm to hold them. And they're going through a lot of times brain development, leaps, different things, and they're building attachment and trust. And, I've heard people say, oh, in cried out method, eventually they just stop crying. Well, yeah, of course they do. They stop crying because they have now learned that you're not going to come to them in that time. And for me, that didn't feel right. And I'm like, if he's crying more and is only calm in my arms during the 2-week period where he's in this regression, then I'm going to listen to like what his body's telling him, and I'm going to hold him more. And you're going to hold him more. And there were nights, especially during this last 18-month regression, that we held him the entire night, and we slept in the chair. Were we sacrificing our like quality of sleep for him to get some sleep? Yes, but there's no way I'm going to let my child cry for an hour in the crib. I'm just not doing that. And I also, don't regret any of that. Like, I think some people are afraid of like, oh, if you hold them more in regressions, then they're going to learn that. And then they're never going to like,
be dependent.
They're going to be dependent or spoiled and I just don't buy any of that. Like, we held him more when he needed held more, and then he would go back to like how he was, or he would change again. And I just went with, what he needed at the time. And I was happy to give that, even if it was a sacrifice on my sleep or your sleep. So,
And then when we brought the second baby home,
yeah. So when we brought the second baby home, we had thought, okay, our first child is, 4 years old now. He could be okay going to his own room or his own bed. We could transition him there. But we decided, we're not really ready to do that. He's not really ready to do that. We asked him, do you ever want to go and sleep in your own room? The answer's been no. And so when the second baby came, obviously he's not going to go into the crib with us or into the bed with us. He's going to be sleeping separately because I did feel like that was a safer alternative and less in a regression where we would hold him in the chair. And so we did the snoo actually with our second, which I don't know. I think it kind of helped, kind of didn't. I wouldn't say like totally like it's, the most wonderful thing, but I do think that like it probably helped a little bit in the beginning. So he was sleeping separate and our first son was still sleeping in between us, but the baby was close enough that like obviously we could hear him and like go and take care of him. And then once the baby got old enough, like at 18 months, which is just a few months ago, he went through this like crazy 18-month regression where I think we held him every night for maybe 2.5 weeks. It was like, oh my gosh, he just would not sleep. And like he's had definitely extensive time where he slept wonderfully in his pack and play, like never an issue. And then you have these, regressions. And so that one lasted the longest. And then after that was over, I didn't realize like that he just would never end up sleeping in his pack and play again because then he was climbing out of it. And then we ended up putting a queen size bed and we have our king size bed. So instead of
like in our bedroom, we have our big bed. And
there's like a little side room that then has a queen size bed. And we did a queen size so that it's comfortable for the adult as well as for the child. And our boys, we don't put them both in the same bed yet because their sleep schedules are a little different. And if one of them's sick or coughing, they end up waking the other one up, or, one of them cries in the middle of the night, they wake the other one up. And so we just, for right now, they're still a little bit separate, but we'll probably end up sleeping 4 across, I'd say within like the next 5 or 6 months.
Well, plus the queen size bed is up against a wall and there's like a rail on one side. So, he's still kind of rambunctious sometimes when it's time to go to sleep. And so he might fall out, right? And so in our other big bed and our actual bedroom, there are no bed rails.
Yeah, we don't need them. We're kind of the bed rails because Kurt sleeps between us.
Right. And I would say that one of the biggest things about co-sleeping with him in the queen size bed now, in that separate space is, yes, you're absolutely spot on to where if one of them's sick, like they're not really interrupting one another because we have the sound machine in that room and that kind of quiets any cries that come from that room, but it also quiets any outside sounds that you might hear in that room, which is really nice. In addition to that, what has really helped in a big way, I would say, is, talking with our oldest son a lot. We communicate a lot and asked him and said, hey, like what do you want to do? What would be ideal for you? And we keep planting seeds. We almost do this like, pre-frame type conversations with them about, when things are going to change down the road, how they might change. And I think that's been really helpful in a lot of different areas, even in this conversation around sleep, like how are we going to do some of these transitions, right? And we really involve him in some of the decision-making there and have those conversations with him.
Like mommy and daddy aren't going to both be sleeping in bed with you anymore. Not because we don't want to, but because we don't want brother sleeping by himself either, right? And we all will eventually sleep together. But for right now, we're going to trade. And so say Monday night, Tiago sleeps with Courage and I sleep with Alchemy in the other room. And then the next night, it's I sleep with Courage and Alchemy, and Tiago sleeps with Alchemy. So we just like switch off each night. We alternate. And both boys, it's kind of like, because Alchemy goes, he's the younger baby, he goes down a little bit earlier than Courage, or he, typically he's ready for bed before Courage is. And so whoever is up with Courage gets that special like one-on-one time. And there are times where he'd say like, oh, mommy, I want you to sleep with me tonight again. And I'd say, oh, but then daddy would lose his turn and he really wants to sleep with you tonight. As opposed to, I'm going to go sleep with brother because brother wants me to sleep with him. It's like we are framing it in a way that it's an opportunity for us to be with both of our boys as opposed to either boy is at fault for the adjustment.
Right. Like we've tried really hard in our communication style to never blame the baby. Right. I think we did that early on and like never say, oh, because of the baby, we can't do X. Or because of the baby, we didn't want to create that resentment unintentionally.
When I said, we don't want the baby to sleep by himself, it was like, would you want brother to sleep by himself? Would you, so it's almost just that particular phrase isn't like a placing blame. It's like for awareness of like, hey, if we're both with you, we have this other human who's also part of our family who ends up sleeping all alone. And what if we all just like we're a team and we chose that we're all going to sleep together, just not all on the same night.
Yeah.
And I think that's gone really well. And it's an opportunity for some one-on-one time with each of our children for both of us. And the fact that we're alternating, co-sleeping is just, it's quality time. It's time we'll never get back. And I love it.
I love it too. I absolutely love it. And I know we've also had some conversations, which I think would be really interesting to talk about. And, maybe not for too much longer, but just a little bit. There's, I don't want to call it a cost, but I don't know what else to call it. Like our intimacy, when it comes to co-sleeping. And right now we're sleeping in separate beds and we've been doing it for a couple months now. And I'd be lying if I said I'm not. I
miss sleeping with you. I do.
So when we all get to sleep together and we get to cuddle and we get to do that sort of thing. So I guess, my question is, what do you think based on what you've seen, what you've read, studying this sort of thing? Like what makes the most sense in terms of how long maybe we should co-sleep with our boys and how soon can we all start sleeping in the same bed again? Like what's your opinion? Because I know Alchemy is now 21 months old. Maybe, we've entertained the idea, do we really still need bed rails? Like you can kind of slide in and out of bed now pretty good. Like what are your thoughts on kind of the next stage?
Yeah. So I love that we plan and I love that we're also flexible. And I don't know when the exact right time is going to be, but I assume it'll be within the next 6 months that we'll end up 4 across. Right. And we've already kind of been planting seeds about we're all going to be back in the same bed. And then we've also discussed when are we going to put the boys in their own bed and we're going to be in our own bed. And that is absolutely on the table. And we talk to our first son about that all the time. We're like, hey, you'll get to design your room exactly the way you guys want it. And it is going to be a time when you and brother are sharing a room and mommy and daddy are in our own room. And I'm assuming that will be within the next 2 years, that before he's 7, and if he would like that sooner, if he wants to try that this next year, he's welcome to his own room at the age that he is, if he really wants that. And we would, either put Alchemy with him or keep Alchemy with us for a little while longer. But I'm not in a rush. And yes, there is this conversation around, hey, co-sleeping and intimacy. And do you put your children's needs and desires before your own needs and desires? And we've had these conversations of like, it's very important to put our marriage first a majority of the time. And we aren't parent first. We are child first. We're family. Like what works best for our whole family. And I'd say that's kind of how we do things. But we are also very aware that if you do not have a strong connected marriage, then everything can fall apart. It starts with the connection of the marriage. And so there is intentionality. If you are not sleeping and cuddling together at night, there has to be intentionality that is created through the day. And we haven't always been best about that. And it's actually been something that we've been challenged with. But, we'll save, the sex after baby conversation for another episode, because I think that we made great breakthroughs in that. And there was a lot of other dynamics going on, even besides, the sleep situation of what was going on with trauma in my body and going through a miscarriage, and even just like the ups and downs and the challenges of, giving birth in the first place, of how we change through that process of what really affects intimacy besides just sleeping together. But definitely sleeping in the same bed when you're so used to that, it's kind of like, remember in high school, for instance, if like when you'd see your friends every single day, and then in the summer you almost don't see or talk to most of them because it takes an extra effort to see them, because you're not just in this situation where you're going to see them every day. That's kind of what happens when you choose to co-sleep with your children. There has to be an intentionality of like, hey, it's not as easy for us to connect in that way now. We have to be really intentional and create that in other areas, other chunks of time through the day, and, create dates and create experiences, create getaways where we are sleeping just us in the bed. Like we were just in California together for a week, and we were able to cuddle up and be in bed together, or on the couch. We make sure during the day, like we touch each other and we're affectionate with each other in that way. And yes, we set time aside. You have to be intimate. And, there is, I'd say, a sacrifice that we're both absolutely making in this season of our life. And also knowing that this is a season, and these boys are going to be at an age where they are never going to sleep with us again. And I think that we both know that. I guess I'm just present to, the temporary nature of having small children. And it's beautiful. And it does come with its challenges. And I think we are sacrificing a bit, and not blindly. We are sacrificing a bit in that area to be with our boys more. And will we ever look back and be like, we should have done that differently? I really don't think so. The little hair twirls and the stinky milk breath and the cuddles in the middle of the night, and our boys love sleeping with both of us. It's those special moments of laying in bed and, Daddy, tell me a story. I still remember, like, I've recorded, like, quietly some of those little interactions at night. And think about when you're with your partner, what are some of your most intimate moments? When you're laying in bed together and you're talking. And we had that before our kids, and we're going to have that again very soon, in a couple of years. And if you look at, like, the big picture, these are the moments that, as long as we stay strong, connected, on the same page, and in agreement on how we're going to do it together, then we don't let our intimacy get away from us. We don't let our connection escape us. We're committed. We're intentional with that in other ways, in other areas. Now we need to be. We're responsible for that. We're not blindly doing any of this. And we are making a conscious choice to have these extra moments and these extra hours and these extra beautiful cuddles with our little boys that we're going to cherish for the rest of our lives. So that's where I'm at on that.
No, it's good to know that there's an intentionality behind it, because I would say, like, we're parents that kind of feel our way through it, right? And it's kind of like, well, reading our boys, taking the temperature of the family unit, not just we're the parents, we say what goes type, I guess, family style, if you want to call it that. And I think that you also have to have this balance of, like, going with the flow, being able to adapt to all the different stages and development cycles that they go through, because as soon as it seems like we get comfortable in one area, something changes. A 6-month-old is different than an 18-month-old, and sleep regressions and being prepared for those things. And I think you've really been on top of it. So it's good to know that in the next 2 years, we'll get to sleep in bed together again. No, I say that jokingly, because you're right. There is a sacrifice involved in this, and I think it's beautiful. And I think that it's hard when you're in it, like, just being honest about it. And if you're a brand new soon-to-be mom or dad, and you're not really sure what to expect, there's definitely sacrifice, and there's challenge, and there's hardship. But I think every bit of it is so fulfilling. It's so rewarding. It's worth it, right? It's so worth it. And we talked about a lot of different things in regards to sleep. Is there anything that maybe we should mention before we hop off? Is there anything you want to say that is absolutely critical, or anything in your notes there that you think they should know?
I would just say going with the flow, and, the phrase riding the highs too high or the lows too low. Like, you hear that, like, don't do that. And I'd say that really applies here. And what I didn't know as a first-time parent that I handled much better as a second-time parent is just remembering that things are temporary, like not getting so attached to your routines that you feel like something's so wrong if they don't work out that week, or not being so terrified in a hard time that it's going to be like that forever. It's not. There are so many transitions, so many ups and downs, especially in the first couple of years, but even straight through, even with a 5-year-old now, it's like you just can't fully count on anything. And so to just always remember what is permanent. And what is permanent is that your marriage is permanent. Your marriage is the big picture. I picture our children older. I know that the sacrifices that we're making now, the time that we're investing, the effort that we're investing, everything that we're pouring into them is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. And we are going to cherish this season of our life for the rest of our lives. And the challenges are temporary, and to just soak it up and remember to focus on what is great in our life. What do we value? And being aware, and on top of it, if something isn't working, what can we do even better? And remembering this is temporary. The hard times are temporary, and the good times are temporary. And to not let the hard times drown out the beauty of the good times, because the stress really can cast a shadow that you look back and like, wow, I really wish I could have enjoyed that more. And just doing what you can to prepare, and then leaving it up to God, and just knowing hey, this isn't in our control. We are dancing in this experience of parenthood, and to be okay with that, and to know you've given it your all at the end of the day. We're not meant to be perfect. We're just meant to give it our all. And I feel that we're really doing that.
100%. Thank you for hanging out with us during this conversation today about sleep. Hopefully you got some value. Hopefully we were able to share a little bit about our mistakes or areas in which we, have grown in. We're going to drop some links. We're going to drop some links to some of the things that we talked about in the comments. You don't have to get the same stuff that we got. You don't have to use our links if you don't want to. But if you're swimming in this sea of oh my gosh, there's so many new things to get because we're about to welcome a new baby. We're about to bring a new baby.
You don't
home.
need most of them.
Or maybe we're going to go into, a new stage with a second baby. And, what's that transition of 1 to 2? We're happy to share what worked for us. We're happy to share what didn't work for us. And again, you don't have to get our links. You can go find the version that works best for you, but we'll share them with you just in case you do want to check them out. And I don't know what we're going to talk about next time, but it's been fun talking about sleep. I know we could always use a little bit more sleep now that we're parents. But yeah, every moment's been absolutely special. And I just want to say thank you for really, I don't know if I'd call it leading the way so much as really caring about it. Really caring about it, and especially caring about our boys and their experience. I know as the mom and dad, we will obviously get to be more intimate in our sleep. But it's so cool that we've been able to find different ways of being intimate and growing in that area to stay connected, to stay close. Because at the end of the day, like, our marriage is what we model for our kids, and we want our kids to have strong marriages, because marriage and family is the core of what makes the society work, right? And if we want to change the world, we want to, change our home and what we can do there first and foremost. So appreciate you for hanging on with us. Is there any last thing you want to say?
I guess just the last little thought is, ladies, if you need a nap, just ask your husband for a couple of hours. If you need a shower, ask. And husbands, just please, a little extra grace in those situations. She might not know exactly what she needs or what to ask for, but sometimes a nap, if you're just like, hey, give me an hour, I'll give you an hour. Give me 2 hours, I'll give you 2 hours. I mean, it just goes such a long way. So I guess that's the last little thought there.
Thanks for hanging out, and we hope this helps you continue to build an even more rock solid family.